Welcome everyone to this session of our Industry and Transition Summit. I'm thrilled to have Adam Antoniades. He's telling me I'm saying that correctly, so that's good. Have him with us today so we can talk about what's going on in our industry. And it's election day. The day we're recording this is actually election day. I'm in my office, and so is Adam. And all I could think of, Adam, is that it's election day, and if I had your hair, I'd be president of the United States today. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a job that anyone wants these days, is it?
It's rough. It's a rough gig all around. So speaking of tough, I mean, you're president of the firm for like a year or something before COVID hits. You're CEO, I mean, for like a year before COVID. I mean,
no,
not that long.
2 months actually. I was made CEO in December.
Oh, right, December.
3 months, right? So December of last year. So I'm not even at my 1-year anniversary yet.
Oh my goodness, that's right. So I had the dates off a little bit, but they you get this firm, and I know you're a culture guy because you and I have been talking a little bit, and I know that's a big part of your personality, and that's what's great about having a CEO who loves people. Well, how do you? I mean, obviously, let's take all the other issues about COVID and everything aside, because we'll get to that. But how do you inculcate culture in a firm when all you can do is this? We could just, you don't have these in-person things. You're not handshaking everybody like I'm sure you would like to. You know what I mean? So how do you do it? How do you put your imprint on a firm, via Zoom?
Yeah, look, it's very, very difficult. It's actually the number one challenge that we've identified as we think about not only work from home, but return to office, because like many firms out there, we're sort of re-examining the whole, real estate strategy, right? And now that we've demonstrated that we can all work favorably or adequately, or actually even deliver better service remotely, how do you foster a service culture per se, right? Or just a culture in totality? What we found is probably the single biggest issue is continuous communication and very transparent communication, right? Because you're susceptible to the rumor mill, like every firm is, obviously. So making sure you're getting in front of your team, your advisors on a continuous basis, that you're consistent with the messaging, and that you're really being very, very transparent and fostering opportunities for people to interact. I mean, you think about what we've been through here versus whether it's COVID or social unrest or just sort of the macroeconomic impact with things like interest rates going to zero, which of course is important to firms like ours. Just helping the team through that is a really big issue, and making sure you're constantly, touching base and keeping them in touch.
So what do you tackle first? You mentioned we've got a pandemic, right? We've got social unrest. We've got the markets that are shaky at best. You know what I mean? Based on we don't know why. You got a divisive politics. And you've been on the job of 2 months. So what do you tackle first?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, the social unrest didn't hit the same day as COVID did, so that was a relief, right? No, look, certainly it was a surprise for all of us. We just come off the best quarter we'd ever had in the history of the company, and then next thing you know, we go into lockdown, and I think on the surface that's challenging for a new CEO. In some respects, it sort of created a fresh start per se. Right, and it gives me it leveled the playing field, if you like, for everybody. And for us in particular, it gave us an opportunity to recognize that there was an economic impact to the company that we had to move quickly to remedy. But at the same time, we had a choice to make, right? How are you going to cure that? Do you focus in your existing business? We all look for times of disruption to try and grow the firm through recruitment and things like that. We made the choice to look inwards, understand that our advisors were going through a difficult time, and really essentially put every other activity on pause and focused all our energy on helping our advisors get through COVID. We released something called the Resiliency Pack. It's been pretty well documented across the industry, right? It was a fairly comprehensive sort of mechanism for helping them navigate that first in terms of their business and COVID. Secondly, in terms of managing sort of the human capital aspects, the financial aspects for those that were hit badly, navigating the stimulus, the CARES Act was really important. And then the third one was really around understanding that when there's disruption, there's assets in motion, and that's the best time for our advisors to sort of live into the whole advice concept, right? It's live into the purpose for the sake of argument.
What's interesting about that is that's a really good way to start culture, right? By taking a stand like that, sending everybody a packet, getting really involved with their day to day. We talked to Lieutenant General Nadia West, in this conference too, and she talked about leadership, a lot of it being empathy. So that shows a lot of empathy, for the advisors and what they're doing every day. So that may be a good segue for you guys into building a new culture.
Yeah, what was interesting, it shaped our strategy going forward, because what we realized that first of all, we got accolades like we've never had before on the Resiliency Pack, right? And look, fundamentally, the choice was, what are we going to stop doing? What are we going to keep doing? And what are we going to start doing?
Right.
And that was sort of the approach. And, the stops aren't easy, but we definitely, took some measures per se to prepare and to fund all the other activities per se, right? So what we realized is that the importance of the Resiliency Pack was that it came at a time that made it very relevant. And what it's enabled us to do is seize this concept that relevance is absolutely critical for advisors.
Yeah.
So as we shape our strategy going forward, we continue to we've planted our flag in the ground around driving growth within our existing businesses, our existing advisors. And doing so in a way that is relevant to them is very much at the heart of our strategy and the way we deliver and the way we go to market, right? That's really the key part for us.
So you had mentioned before real estate, couple things. One, and you mentioned a whole bunch of stuff that we're dealing with the Zoom. What stuff are we going to keep? In other words, which pieces of what we've been forced to go through because of Zoom, and you're a new CEO, so a new CEO always tries to take a fresh look, right, at the company, what's going on. So when you look at your company and the industry, real estate, what technology we were forced to adapt and methodology we were forced to adapt because of the pandemic, do you think we're going to take with us that, hey, these are great ideas, let's continue with this, and not just Cetera, but I mean for the whole industry? How do you see it?
Yeah, look, I think there's opportunities and challenges. I think what the pandemic's done is accelerated a lot of trends that were already underway, right? So fundamentally, digitization, as they call it, right? Or digital enablement, and that engagement model with the client. I think clients are much more receptive, regulators are more receptive, and I think firms are much braver about the pace at which they're willing to deploy and their willingness to sort of force adoption, if you like, right? Take measures to force adoption. So I think everyone understands that. I think the two probably biggest areas that are more challenging but big opportunities is our profession's been in the dark ages relative to the employee experience. So reimagining the employee experience, understanding that now the world's your oyster, you can hire anywhere, and you can seek out talent, and you can create an experience that's very attractive to the next generation, right? That's really, really critical. We have historically not been great at that, right? We were on old stodgy sort of, Wall Street, Main Street derivative, if you like. And now, we can build, employee experiences that are very, very progressive in terms of all sorts of aspects of it. So I think that's very much, we're reimagining that whole experience right now, looking to deploy it going into 21. We're still not back in the office. And then the final piece on the real estate is the whole brick and mortar concept right now really is much more fit for purpose. You don't need, hundreds of thousands of square feet, right? So we contemplate facilities that are much more space sharing, so to speak, right? WeWorks like experiences. There'll be some where we really do have to have a solid footprint because it's big parts of our organization that benefit from scale and being together. And then you've got your showcase experience offices, right? That are much more higher end, much more about, the client engagement or advisor engagement, for lack of a better term. So I think, but overall our footprint will likely go down by half. That's my guess. Over the course of time, not immediately, right? But over the course of time.
Well, so much of our industry has these long leases that they've signed. They're kind of stuck with it for a while there. But I agree. It's interesting. There's what I keep hitting on. What I also heard you say. There's a level of acceptance today among clients, not just advisors. So the intergenerational thing you touched on too. I mean, we do a terrible job. I think it's a little bit better today. But as of last year, do you happen to know what the percentage of growth we've had with millennial clients has been over the last 3 years? Zero. I mean, there's been no growth. We've had none. But I'd be curious to see what that number is post-pandemic, because this is something they're used to and comfortable with, this back and forth. What has surprised me is how comfortable the 80-year-olds are now with doing Zoom. So that's another thing that we're never going to quite go back to, and which maybe speaks to not needing as much real estate, because we don't, if folks are, why would I want to drag my butt down to your office if I'm 75 years old and we can do it here like this? I wrote an article about what a 3-year-old can teach us about our business. And it was all about these 75 and 80-year-olds, they're sort of ambivalent about technology. They're not taking pictures of their food, on Instagram. But if they want to see their grandkids, they better figure out Zoom, And now if they can look at their grandkids on Zoom, they want their service providers, and their consultants and their consiglieres to talk to them like this as well. Why not? Fair is fair. They want to be in their slippers, and you're okay to be in a t-shirt, So it's a different mode. And I think that's kind of one of the things we'll carry with us. I'm not sure that we'll never need brick and mortar, but because of the way this is working, I'm seeing, I tend to be on your side. I bet it'll be about half, about 50%.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be the status symbol that it's always been. And I think it'll be much more fit for purpose, to your point. And look, I have an 85-year-old mother in England. The only way I get to see her, probably for the indefinite future, that is based as, but as far as I can tell, is likely going to be over Zoom. So every Sunday, I'm on Zoom with her, with the kids, and talking to her. That's just part and parcel of the new world, and she would never have attempted Zoom. She only got a cell phone 5 years ago, for goodness sake. So it gives you a sense that there's no choice anymore. And I think when you overlay that the pandemic's brought a germaphobe out in all of us in some way, I think it's served as a big catalyst. And the regulators as well have now had to change their thinking, right? They're now starting to open their minds to, not having to do everything in person, to have positive affirmations for things like e-delivery. They're starting to wrap their minds around how that can change. And the digital experience will take shape. And we onboard advisors now and do home office visits digitally, virtually, right? And I think if you sort of embrace it, it gives you so much more dimension of what you can show.
Well, look, I think we're all going to be happy to put 2020 to bed, right? When we get a chance to say adios, to that. Now, and also you would have had plans that you've had to adapt and change, for 2021. But what do you see in 2021? What are some of the things we talked a little bit about real estate? We talked about some of this tech, but for the advisor on the ground, doing this business, what do you see for them in 2021?
Look, I think you're going to continue to see consolidation. Hard to tell what's going to happen with the election in terms of the the disruption that's ahead. It can take all sorts of different shapes and sizes. There's a whole, theory around macroeconomics catching up to the market, right? And effectively us seeing some disruption in the market. If that happens, then scale's going to be important, and hopefully our peers out in the industry are sort of figuring out how to best position themselves to help advisors, because times of disruption offer our advisors a unique opportunity to live into their purpose. Yes. Right? I really subscribe to the idea that this is a purposeful profession, right? Where we calm fears, we bring sanity at times when irrational thinking is dominating, and we help advisors avoid make mistakes that would otherwise make. And that in part is really for advice in my mind. These are the times to really shine, to really not be scared by it, live into it. And right. In my experience, advisors that do that really experience tremendous growth through that time. So from our perspective, a lot of focus on enabling that whole concept, right? Putting our advisor in a place where they can maximize their reach. Whether generationally and in terms of breadth, and in terms of moving further upstream from a net worth perspective. I think we all know that deposits at banks are at an all-time high, right? Yeah. That will signal a disruption, will signal an opportunity for that to come back into the market, and those that prepare for it will be in a good position. So I think that's what we're anticipating. Irrespective of that, we don't wait to see what happens. We've got a strategy. Our strategy is fundamentally focused on enabling growth within our existing advisors, and bringing all the capabilities to bear in a way that's relevant to them. That's really important, right? I think too many firms like ours sort of build the Taj Mahal and then they invite everyone to come worship at their temple. Right. Our view is every advisor, every financial institution has a business sort of goal, and it's our job to bring our assets and our capabilities to bear in a way that matters to them. So we've focused a lot on enabling that delivery mechanism, which of course is core to how we're engineered. We stack up our businesses up against communities that are very custom built, right? CPAs, financial institutions, large enterprises, super OSJs, and more of a traditional model, and just showing up in that way that makes it relevant to that audience is really important from our perspective.
Yeah, well, I think next year what's going to be interesting is sort of making sure everything like that happens, and advisors need to be aware. I also think it's very interesting what you said about good advisors, because I agree, good advisors are this is the time, this is what you got paid for. Now you got to earn your pay now. But there's going to be a lot of bad advisors too who have not. Remember, it's been 10 years since we had one of these things, or a really bad market. So a lot of people think, geez, this is easy, and all of a sudden the emperor's going to have no clothes because everybody's a genius in an up market. Everybody's a smart CEO when things are going up, but all of a sudden, stuff hits the fan.
And look, such an important point, particularly given how indexed to the market so much of the business is versus back in 2009. So if you think about it, right, so many advisors now are in the RIA only model, and this idea that they can leverage product structure with things like annuities to really help clients deliver better outcomes gets compromised. And that's, in disrupted markets is where these types of solutions can be deployed holistically as part of our portfolio to really determine a certain outcome. So I do think you're right. There is some pain to come, particularly for those that are not holistic or hybrid, for lack of a better term, that don't have a full sort of suite of capabilities at their disposal. And that's okay though, right? Because that just that's what makes horse races, we say in England, right? Some are going to win and some are going to lose. So,
I mean, how much value are you adding if you're just selling a bunch of indexes, to clients when you're, not much.
Yeah, and again, I think the profession needs to realize that the majority of value is in the advice, right? It's in helping clients, crystallize outcomes that they're pursuing, and bring in the discipline and the behavior management to bear in a way that creates certainty of outcome, right? Rather than I'm going to make you richer, which of course we know is a fair weather sort of strategy. It doesn't really stand the test of time.
It doesn't. Not at all. Well, I think our the people who are at this conference today, they're here because they want to hear people's takes on where the future is going to go. And I think I'm hearing you saying that advice is still going to be king, regardless of what happens in the robo world. And one of the last things I want to talk about is we did talk about millennials and maybe some other underserved markets. That's going to have to be the future for us. And there's a social justice element to that, and there's also just a good business sense element to it. How are you trying to help your advisors to sort of try to take advantage of where those opportunities might be, in the future?
Yeah, so you broke up there on me, Tony. So I missed up the middle part of that question. If I can ask you to just ask it again, that'd be great.
Yeah. So in general, what I'm saying is, we talked about millennials a little bit, and how that's a market that's an opportunity. It's a market we don't have. We hear a lot about social justice in our business as well. Other potential opportunities and markets that we're not, reaching. How are you going to help your guys going forward, to sort of get access to those spots and makes, build their business?
Yeah, it's a great question. And in fact, I participated on a call last week for a conference called Diversitas, which is a bunch of college kids that are sort of examining our profession and very much targeted towards minorities, if you like, right? It's much more about diversity. So I do think there's a very interesting play that's coming into that beyond the fact that it's incumbent on all of us to sort of be much more declarative around what sort of belief system we subscribe to as an organization, what we're prepared to do to drive sustainable change, right? Because as you suggested, the data's undeniable. First of all, fastest growing middle class are minorities. Little to no question about that. The majority of wealth in this country and for the foreseeable future will be in the hands of women, right? It'll be up 70%. I think it's close to 57%. Even though you can't say it's the minority anymore, what you can say is that we don't do a good job managing to them, right? And we don't have enough advisors that are female or minorities in the equation, right? So I think recognizing between that and the fact that there's all sorts of different data that diverse organizations actually are much more effective and achieve better results. I think it's incumbent on all of us to find a path to really drive that diversity more broadly across the whole organization. And there's various ways you can do that. From our perspective, we've got a three-pronged strategy. One is internal. It's about recognizing and celebrating differences that exist within our employee communities, making people feel like they belong. When we went through the social unrest, I sort of held the mirror up and I said, are we doing enough? And the answer was no. I'm embarrassed to say that was the case. And so now, look, we have a chance to, if that's the catalyst for driving change, that's great as far as I'm concerned. So internally, we've got a whole initiative underway. We have stopped short of hiring a chief diversity officer because to me, that signals that that's a person's job. And I think it's everyone's job. Okay. So the second thing is with our advisors is understanding the reach your advisors can have within their communities. That's ultimately the best way to create those touch points, and bringing that next generation in is ultimately the best way to touch the millennial market, right? There are, again, all sorts of studies that demonstrate that people want to do business with people they can relate to. So we have a couple of major financial institutions that we do business with. One is Korean, one is Chinese, and guess what? Their entire advisor base is Korean and Chinese, and their entire client base is Chinese, right? People want to do business with people they relate to, and that means it's incumbent on us to sort of drive that, whether it's through programs like literacy programs or financial wellness programs, or just more making our business more attractive to that next generation.
Also,
It's
your
really
advisors, your advisors, I assume, are the same as everybody else. They're aging, so they're old. They got to look at succession. If they want to have a business in perpetuity, based on all the stats that you were mentioning too, you have to just be smart, build a business that's sustainable long term, that can pay you while you're retired. Let's get some people in here that can sort of do that, and it's just good business.
Yeah, and I think it's so much more reachable than people think. We had through COVID, we brought on 200 interns. It's out of a business that we acquired, formerly called Foresters, and now Cetera Investors in our world. They've got actual branch locations, and they've had a very successful internship program. 200 participants in the first in a virtual program. It's not as effective as we'd like it to be, frankly. But look, vast majority of the attendees are minorities, and that's a great way for us to sort of reach that. The other thing we've done is really gone at the heart philanthropically. We just recently stood up a scholarship program through 7 colleges where we're funding, in our first instance, 7 students that are diverse. We're funding sort of an annual payment through their program. We're partnering them with an advisor for internships that will ultimately turn into apprenticeships. And look, here's what's really interesting here. We've got an opportunity right now, based on everything that's transpired through COVID, to really show how much opportunity there is in our space, that it is a purposeful profession, right? There are complexity for people is only getting worse. So financial advice to navigate that complexity really is purposeful in my mind. And now doing it in a way that creates the right employee experience and can appeal to the next generation is critical. And I think it's right there in front of us. We just got to reach out, and we got to be willing to change, right?
That's great. I kind of want to leave it at that. Which, if I have one more thought that I want to get out, what I find when I talk to young people, this whole COVID stuff has been very difficult on them, because normally you go to an office and you hang out and you just watch people. You learn so much just by being there, and that's kind of how you get ahead. You make relationships. You go to lunch with people. You figure stuff out. Boy, they can't do any of that now. So it is just really tough, for young people. I just bring that up as a thought. Have you done anything? You mentioned the interns, but any way to mentor people during this sort of weird time?
Look, it's not perfect, that's for sure. And yes, there's all sorts of different things. I mean, we're fostering study groups. Every 2 or 3 times a week, I'll get on with a group of employees, 10 to 15, and sort of have just a 30-minute interaction where there's no work being talked about. It's just about how you doing, exchange some funny stories of things that have happened, particularly in the early part of the pandemic. That's something I could never do before, right? I get to more advisors and more employees that way now than I've ever been able to do in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. It's that's some of the ways we can bridge the gap. But ultimately, look, I do hope that we find a path to normalcy. I'm sure we will. I hope it's sooner rather than later, and that we do have opportunities in person, because I think the ability to inspire, to sort of drive passion in a business it really needs that personal touch and that personal interaction. And I think it's at the heart of ultimately what's built this profession. And I really hope we get some of it back. In the meantime, though, there's things you can do, right?
Yeah, I think that's great. So we're going to leave it there, Adam. It was really great to see you. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for helping sponsor Cetera, for helping sponsor this event. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Tony, appreciate the invitation. Any chance, anytime that we have to do these things, we're grateful for the opportunity, and hopefully we didn't put the audience to sleep here. So
Pretty good. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks.